October 14th, 1943, 29,000 feet over the German border. The air is thin enough to taste the metal of your oxygen mask. It's a bitter, cold, and lonely place, a stratosphere of crystalline blue above and a quilted blanket of white clouds below. For Captain Frank Grice of the 56th Fighter Group, this hostile beauty is just the backdrop to a growing dread. The low, throaty rumble of his Pratt & Whitney R2800 double wasp engine is the only friendly sound in 1,000 miles of sky. The vibrations run through the stick in his hand, up his arm, and settle in his teeth. His Republic P-47D Thunderbolt, number 4275501, feels less like an aircraft and more like a bank vault with wings. He calls her the Anvil. Today, she feels every one of her 7 tons. He's alone. A flicker in the oil pressure gauge an hour ago forced him to fall back from the main bomber stream, leaving the thundering herd of B-17s and their buzzing escort fighters to press on toward the ball bearing plants at Schweinfurt. He fixed the issue, a minor clog, but now he is a straggler, a lone sheep wandering in a forest owned by wolves. His eyes, raw from the strain, constantly scan, sweeping the vast emptiness. The sun glints off the plexiglass canopy, a blinding flare that forces him to shield his eyes. And that's when he sees them. Not a flare, not a reflection, a glint of something moving. 1 glint becomes 2, 2 become 4, 4 become a swarm. They rise from the cloud layer below, climbing with a predatory grace his P-47 could never match. Focke-Wulf 190s, the butcher birds of the Luftwaffe, and a pair of Messerschmitt Bf-109Gs, the slender sharks of the Reich. They ascend in a perfect, disciplined formation, their yellow noses pointing toward him like daggers. 9 of them. Grice does a quick, cold calculation. 9 to 1. His throat goes dry. The mission briefing on Luftwaffe tactics flashes through his mind. Engage with a wingman. Never allow yourself to be isolated. Maintain altitude and energy advantage. He has no wingman. He is isolated, and they are climbing to meet him, erasing his altitude advantage with every second. The German leader, a Hauptmann in an FW-190 adorned with dozens of victory markings on its rudder, waggles his wings. A taunt, a greeting before the kill. The others spread out, forming a wide, loose bracket, a net closing around him. You can feel the geometry of the trap. They intend to box him in, to force him into a turning fight where the heavy Thunderbolt is at its worst. A P-47 turns like a freight train. A Focke-Wulf can dance on the head of a pin. Grice knows this. They know this. His knuckles are white on the spade grip. The German radio chatter, a garbled hash of guttural commands he can't understand, crackles faintly over his own frequency. But he doesn't need a translator to understand the tone. It's the sound of hunters who have cornered their prey. He pushes the throttle forward to the firewall. The engine roars, but the Anvil barely surges. At this altitude, the air is too thin to give the propeller a solid bite. The Germans are closing fast, their movements fluid and coordinated. They are experienced, aces probably. The lead FW-190 pulls ahead slightly, its pilot wanting the honor of the first pass. Grice's heart hammers against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the steady rhythm of the engine. He could try to outrun them in a shallow dive, but they would hound him all the way to the deck, peppering him with cannon fire. He could try to fight, to turn and meet them head-on, but they would be on his tail in seconds, their 20mm cannons turning his aircraft into a sieve. Every standard tactical option leads to a smoking hole in the German countryside. His instructors' voices echo in his head, a chorus of textbook maneuvers and classroom theories. None of them apply here. This is not a duel. It is an execution. The net is drawn tight, and the wolves are beginning to circle.
You fly like a brick, Grice. A clumsy, predictable brick. The voice of Major Thomas Stollard, his flight instructor back at Dale Mabry Field, cuts through the engine's drone. The memory is sharp, stinging. Stollard was an artist and a P-40 Warhawk, a man who believed dogfighting was a fencer's duel of grace and finesse. He saw combat as a chess match played at 300 miles per hour. Frank Grice, however, was no chess player. He was a man who preferred to flip the board over. During training, while other cadets practiced Immelmann turns and split-S maneuvers, Grice was off on his own, climbing as high as he could go and then pointing the nose straight down. He wasn't practicing flying, he was practicing falling. Stollard would watch him, shaking his head in disgust. That's not a tactic, it's a suicide attempt. You'll rip the wings off. It requires zero skill, zero thought. It's a caveman move, Grice. You swing a club and hope for the best. War in the air is won by pilots, not by idiots who can point a plane at the ground. The nickname stuck. The other pilots called his signature move the Caveman dive, an ugly, brutal, artless plunge that relied on nothing more than gravity and the sheer, stubborn mass of his aircraft. He absorbed the mockery, the condescension, and kept practicing. He learned the precise moment the controls would start to stiffen in the screaming descent. He memorized the unholy groans and shudders of an airframe pushed beyond its engineered limits. He knew, better than anyone, how to fall. Now, at 29,000 feet, with 9 Luftwaffe fighters preparing to dissect him, the Mockery sounds like prophecy. The lead FW-190 pilot is making his move. He peels off, a graceful arc that will bring him around in a perfect firing position. Grice watches him come, the radial engine of the Butcher Bird a black dot growing larger every second. The German pilot is patient. He isn't spraying bullets from a distance. He's closing the gap, ensuring a clean, efficient kill. He expects Grice to brake, to turn hard left or right, to present his belly or his tail. He expects a textbook defensive maneuver. He expects a fencer. He's about to get a brick. Grice ignores him. He does the one thing no sane pilot in his position would ever do. He pulls back gently on the stick. The anvils, heavy and blunt, lifts toward the deep, empty cobalt of the upper stratosphere. He starts to climb. Not a desperate, clawing climb for escape, but a slow, deliberate ascent. He is bleeding airspeed, trading precious momentum for a few hundred feet of worthless altitude. The Thunderbolt shudders, the controls feeling mushy and unresponsive in the thin air. The roar of the engine changes pitch, straining against the pull of gravity. Through his canopy, he can see the German formation react. They hesitate. Their fluid, coordinated attack falters for a beat. This isn't in their playbook. A lone, heavy fighter, cornered and unnumbered, is climbing directly into a stall. It's madness. The lead German pilot, now almost in firing range, aborts his graceful curve and yanks his own stick back, pulling his FW-190 into a steeper climb to follow. He thinks Grice is panicking, making a fatal rookie error. The other 8 pilots, seeing their leader commit, follow suit. They are sharks smelling blood, and their prey is suddenly floundering, pointing its nose to the sky in a final, futile gesture. They surge upwards, their lighter, more agile aircraft easily gaining on the struggling American P-47. Grice watches them in his rearview mirror. They are closing, their propeller spinners like hungry mouths. This is the moment, the commitment. He has baited the hook. He has laid the trap. Now he just has to hope they are arrogant enough to fly into it. He keeps pulling back on the stick, the plane now trembling on the very edge of aerodynamic lift, a 7-ton sledgehammer balanced on a pinhead. The world slows down. The violent shuddering of the airframe becomes a low, resonant hum. The straining scream of the Pratt & Whitney engine softens to a ragged gasp as it fights for oxygen in the near void. For Captain Frank Grice, time itself seems to stretch and thin, just like the air outside his canopy. He is hanging, suspended between the earth and the sun, at the absolute zenith of his climb. The stall horn begins to blare, a frantic, useless warning. He knows exactly where he is, the point of 0G, the precipice. For a single, eternal second, the anvil is no longer flying. It is a 14,000-pound piece of metal that has run out of momentum. It is weightless, motionless. Below him, the 9 German fighters are still climbing, their noses pointed up at his belly. They are a staggered constellation of black crosses and yellow noses spread out in their pursuit. Their energy is high, their speed still formidable, but they are all committed to the vertical. They see a stalled P-47, a sitting duck hanging in the sky, helpless. Hauptmann Richter, the German ace in the lead FW-190, is already lining up his shot. He can picture it, a quick burst from his cannons, the American fighter blossoming into orange flame, another victory marking painted on his tail. He is focused on the target, on the kill.
He fails to see the celestial mechanics of the situation. He fails to understand that Grice hasn't climbed to escape. He has climbed to create a cliff. Grice takes a steadying breath, the rubber of his oxygen mask cold against his lips. His movements are calm, deliberate, honed by dozens of practice runs in the empty skies over Florida. He isn't panicking. He is officiating a ceremony of physics. He kicks the right rudder pedal. Hard. The sluggish nose of the Thunderbolt yaws sideways, unsticking from its upward trajectory. At the same time, he pushes the control stick forward, all the way to the instrument panel. The effect is instantaneous and violent. The nose doesn't just drop, the entire aircraft pivots on its center of gravity. The sky above is replaced by the cloud-dusted earth below. The anvil flips over onto its back and then plunges, nose first, into a vertical dive. For the German pilots, the picture changes in a terrifying instant. One moment, they are climbing toward a stationary target. The next, that target has vanished, replaced by the full silhouette of a P-47 Thunderbolt, growing larger at an impossible rate. It is falling directly into their formation. It is no longer an aircraft, it is an avalanche. Richter screams a warning into his radio, but it's too late. They are caught in the worst possible position, low on airspeed at the top of a climb, with a 7-ton projectile aimed directly at their faces. Their elegant, agile fighters feel like kites in a hurricane. They have no time to turn, no time to dive away. They are trapped in the kill box Grice has created for them. The sound in Grice's cockpit is no longer an engine's roar. It is the sound of the universe being torn apart. A high-pitched shriek builds to a deafening scream as the air stacks up against the P-47 fuselage. The airspeed indicator needle leaps across the dial, 350, 400, 450 miles per hour. Gravity has taken over. He is no longer flying a plane, he is aiming a bullet. Through the shuddering canopy, he sees the first FW-190 swell to fill his entire view. The pilot's face is a pale, terrified blur. Grice's thumb finds the gun trigger on the control stick. He doesn't aim with the precision of a sniper. He doesn't have to. He is the club. He is the caveman. He squeezes the trigger.
The anvil erupts. The simultaneous firing of 8.50 caliber Browning M2 machine guns transforms the P-47 from a falling object into a forward-facing volcano. The sound is a physical blow, a deafening jackhammer that vibrates through Grice's entire body. A torrent of lead, 4 guns per wing, spews forth, a concentrated stream of over 6,000 rounds per minute. The tracers, bright white streaks, are almost invisible in the sun, but their impact is not. They converge on the lead FW-190. There is no elegant stitchwork of bullet holes across a wing. The sheer density of fire acts like a saw. The German fighter's engine cowling disintegrates into a cloud of metal confetti. The propeller spins away, a cartwheeling disk of death. The entire front of the aircraft simply ceases to exist. Grice doesn't even see it explode. He is already past it, dropping through the space where it used to be. The German formation, once a disciplined pack of hunters, is thrown into complete disarray. They scatter, braking hard in every direction. But their airspeed is low, their control sluggish. They are reacting. Grice is acting. He is pure kinetic energy. A second FW-190, attempting a desperate roll to escape, presents its full belly to him. Grice makes a slight adjustment with his rudder pedals, walking the stream of .50 caliber rounds across the enemy plane. The thin metal of the underside offers no resistance. A fire ignites in the wing root, a flicker of orange that blossoms instantly into a consuming torrent. The plane snaps in half, the tail section separating from the fuselage as the center fuel tank detonates. 2 down. He plummets through the heart of their formation. A Bf-109 flashes past his right wing, its pilot firing wildly, his green tracers whipping harmlessly into the empty sky behind Grice. Another FW-190 tries to pull its nose around for a head-on pass, a move of suicidal bravery. Grice doesn't flinch. He holds the trigger down. The German plane is shredded before its cannons can even bear. Its canopy shatters, and the aircraft, pilot likely killed instantly, continues its upward climb for a few ghostly seconds before stalling and beginning its own final uncontrolled tumble to the earth. 3. This isn't a dogfight. Elegance is dead. Finesse is a forgotten language. This is a slaughterhouse governed by the laws of mass and acceleration.
Grice isn't out-turning his opponents. He is simply falling faster than they can think. He is a cannonball tearing through a papier-mâché wall. Another FW-190 dives after him, trying to match his speed, but it's a futile effort. The lighter German airframe can't handle the velocity. Grice watches in his mirror as pieces begin to shear off his pursuer's wings under the extreme stress. The pilot makes the fatal mistake of trying to pull out too sharply, and his entire starboard wing rips away from the fuselage. The fighter becomes a spinning asymmetrical wreck, tumbling end over end. 4. The chaos lasts less than 20 seconds. 20 seconds of screaming wind, hammering guns, and shattering aircraft. Grice slices through the last of the enemy formation, his plane now well over 500 miles per hour. The remaining German pilots are no longer predators. They are survivors, scattered across the sky, their perfect trap utterly broken. He hasn't just killed 4 of them, he has psychologically shattered them all. He has dragged them into his world, the ugly, vertical world of the caveman, and they were not prepared for its brutality. But his own battle is far from over. He is now a prisoner of his own tactic, hurtling toward the ground at a velocity his aircraft was never designed to withstand. The enemy is behind him. The new enemy is the planet Earth.
The world outside the canopy is a green and brown blur. The screaming of the wind has reached an impossible pitch, a physical pressure that seems to want to implode the cockpit. The entire airframe of the Anvil is now groaning in protest, a chorus of shrieking metal and popping rivets. The airspeed indicator is jammed against its peg, far past 550 miles per hour. This is the zone Major Stollard warned him about. This is compressibility. The air, moving faster than the speed of sound over parts of the wings, is no longer behaving like a fluid. It is a solid wall. The controls are frozen. The stick is locked in place as if set in concrete. He isn't a dive he cannot escape. Grice plants his boots on the floor and pulls back on the stick with every ounce of strength he possesses. Nothing. The ground rushes up to meet him. He can see individual trees now, a winding country road, a farmhouse. He uses his free hand to grab the stick with both, his muscles screaming, veins bulging on his forehead. The G-forces begin to build as the plane, ever so slightly, starts to respond. The force crushes him down into his seat, a monstrous, invisible weight. The blood drains from his head. His vision narrows to a tunnel. Gray fades to black around the edges. He is blacking out. He fights it, grunting, tensing every muscle in his body to keep the blood in his brain. The plane shudders so violently he thinks it will disintegrate. A horrifying bang echoes from the right wing as a panel rips away, but the nose is coming up. Slowly, agonizingly, the blur of the ground is tilting back toward the horizon. The G-force is immense, a crushing giant squeezing the life out of him. Just as his vision collapses completely into blackness, the pressure relents. Color floods back in, a painful, sparkling wave. He is flying level. The sky is where it should be. He is maybe 500 feet off the ground. The sudden silence, now that the screaming dive is over, is deafening, broken only by the ragged, powerful roar of the double Wasp engine. He takes a deep, shuddering breath, his body slick with sweat, every muscle aching as if he's been in a car wreck. He dares to look back. He scans the sky behind and above him. It is empty, utterly, completely empty. No pursuit, no vengeful survivors, just the contrails of the high-altitude battle, already dissipating like ghosts, and 4 distant columns of black smoke rising from the German landscape below. 4. He reruns the chaotic seconds in his mind. The first one, shredded head-on. The second, exploding from the belly shots. The third, the failed head-on pass. The fourth, the wing ripping off in the dive. But it felt like more. He saw at least 2 others break apart under the sheer psychological shock and aerodynamic stress. Official confirmation would be impossible, but in the brutal reality of the moment, the effect was the same. He had shattered the entire flight. 9 enemy fighters, reduced to a terrified, scattered remnant. He eases the throttle back and checks his instruments. The oil pressure is steady. The engine temperature is in the green. The Anvil, despite the punishment, is intact. He banks gently, turning his bruised and battered fighter west toward home. There is no elation, no thrill of victory, just a profound, bone-deep exhaustion and the lingering tremor in his hands. He thinks of Stollard's words, 0 skill, 0 thought. Stollard was wrong.
It took immense skill to hold a 7-ton aircraft at the edge of a stall. It took thought to bait the trap perfectly. But maybe Stollard was also right. There was no art in what he had just done. There was no honor. It was crude. It was ugly. It was the brutal, simple logic of a sledgehammer striking a watch. It was a caveman's trick, and in the savage skies over Germany, it was the only thing that had kept him alive.